It's time to get activated. Welcome to the Hopefulist with me, Wendy McClure. This is where we turn those nasty, negative thoughts into positive and work toward a happy, fulfilled life. Now, let's get started. Welcome and thank you for joining me for another episode of Hopefulist Activated, where we talk about what is happening in this world. We get a little into politics, social justice, and most importantly, women's rights. Now, please check out my other podcasts on stressing less and living life to the fullest. This month, we are actually focusing on goals, setting goals, why it's important to set goals, and how to keep on track with your goals. And please like, subscribe, or follow this podcast. I would most appreciate it. That would mean that you would be getting each and every new episode as it comes out. So, on to the work at hand. As I've been spending time on social media, I saw a term that I just loved. Instead of identifying yourself as a Republican or a Democrat, how about we call ourselves humanists? I really love that because that is what I am for: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all humans. We are at a critical time in this country. We are a country divided, and the biggest problem is both sides seem to accuse the other of the same thing. Republicans say freedom is on the line. Democrats say freedom is on the line. And a lot of people are just too stubborn to even attempt to see the other side. We as a country need to put ourselves in the other shoes. We have to try to understand each other and listen to each other. This goes for both sides. And we need to be calm and rational. Now, I've been on both sides. I've been a Republican most of my life. Despite their stance on women's rights and abortion, I always felt in favor of most of their policies. I grew up in an atmosphere where money was the most important thing, and protecting that money was the only issue. Now, don't get me wrong. I grew up in a lower middle class family that had some things, but us kids were far from spoiled or entitled. It wasn't about the fact that we had a lot of money. It was about the fact that the money that we had to figure out how to keep it. Now, I can only speak for myself, but I didn't question a lot of my beliefs as I grew older. I guess I just wasn't encouraged to do so I didn't. And this is why I always say one of my favorite books is The Da Vinci Code, because in it questioned everything I ever knew about religion. And it honestly never even occurred to me to question something like that. I grew up believing this is the way it is, and that's that. I'm embarrassed to say I was in my 30s when I read this book, so it took me a while to realize you are actually allowed to think differently than how you were raised. I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to explain my journey. Now, I was told that liberals just wanted everything for free. They didn't want to work for anything. I was given examples of people who lived on welfare and talk of people having more and more babies so they could continue to get money from the government. And I'm sure there are people that do that. I believed that. And I'm sure there are some people that do take advantage of the system. I was given a certain idea about black and brown people, about who they were and how they lived. And I believed that too. I feel like my transformation was slow in coming, but then all at once. I always felt a certain amount of guilt for some of my stances. So somewhere inside, I knew what I was saying wasn't fair or it was judgmental. It was difficult, though, to break out of my lifelong held beliefs. It finally happened when I saw George Floyd get murdered. when I saw that man begging for his life while someone just kneeled on him until his last breath was exhausted. Made me realize that these types of things are indeed happening all over the place, all the time. And the only time we know about it is when someone catches it on camera. That is when I started to dig into the experience of Black and brown people in this country. I watched them on their videos and listened to what they had to say. I started digging into systemic racial systems, the ones that we have in this country, how they have been oppressed for the last 200 plus years, how it's still happening. And they find themselves in situations it's nearly impossible to get out of. I started to find information that really made me think. A question I've heard from a lot of white people is, why do Black and brown why do they always have to bring up race? Why can't they just talk without bringing up race? Because every day they experience life as a Black or brown person, and they can't escape it. They can't choose not to make it a part of their life. It just is. White people get to walk out of their door every day and experience life without the shadow of judgment just because of how they look. And that is a privilege most people don't realize or acknowledge. Black and brown people are constantly talking about race because it impacts their life every single day. It's a fact of their life. How would you feel if you walked down the street and had people cross in order to not have to walk past you? How would you feel if every time you were in a store, security watched you extremely closely? How would you feel when women walked past you, they clutched their purse a little tighter? Because a lot of women are taught to fear Black and brown people. Maybe not always directly, but indirectly with the information we're given. How do you think that would make you feel? How do you think it would affect your life and your outlook on life? Just think about it. Really, put yourself in their shoes for just a moment. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. Black and brown people face so much because many grow up in single mother homes and neighborhoods that aren't the greatest in town. The example they see in that neighborhood may be the people who deal drugs or other illegal activities are the ones actually making money. That they have more money and power than most of those around them. So they think that is the way they will get ahead as well. I had a conversation with a group of friends recently who live in a nice suburb of Philadelphia. They were talking about their son who was junior in high school. They said, got in with a bad crowd. So they switched him from the public school to the private school in order to get him away from these bad influences. They said if they hadn't done that, he may have started going down a path that they didn't want. And that is when I pointed out that is how it is for Black and brown families. But they don't have the money to put their kids in private school. So they continue down that path. You see it so differently now. I see Black and brown people are doing what they have learned to just survive in this country and to try to get ahead in any way that they can. It's actually sad, and I am sorry that so many others can't see how this oppression has forced Black and brown people into this position. I think one of the first things that you have to stop doing is to defend your whiteness. I feel like so many people just when race is brought up and you're white, that white people are just starting to feel like the bad guy and their defenses go up immediately. And what I did is I stopped taking things so personally. I didn't take it as a personal affront when it was pointed out to me how I've been privileged my whole life, that I'd separated it from myself, that's when I could see more clearly that I was indeed living in privilege. And there's really nothing to be ashamed of, especially if you're willing to do something to help change the situation now. Now, they talk of reparations to Black and brown people because the fact that their ancestors were slaves mean they have no generational wealth to pass on. They can never get ahead because of how far they are behind. I've heard so many people say, why should we have to pay for slaves we never had? Well, it's because it's the only way to even attempt to give them the same opportunities that a lot of white people are just born into, just for the fact that they are white. The fact that we have parents that have built up generational wealth over the generations. And then they leave it to their children, who then take it, better themselves, make more money, and then leave it to their children. That's how another way that white people have privilege. Now, I know this isn't the case for all Black and brown people, just like it isn't the same for all white people. I'm not saying this is a representative of everyone in these categories, but what I have done is to stop judging people based on what they look like. Just because a white person has had numerous bad experience with Black or brown people doesn't mean that is everyone's experience, and vice versa. So many people think because they know a few bad apples, it's representative of a whole race. Now, you wouldn't want to be judged because you're too tall or too short, but in essence, it's the same as judging for someone. It's the same as judging someone for the color of their skin. I wanted to talk about all this just to show my personal progress through the years. I want to show that I have been on both sides of the aisle, and I hope that I'm not wording things in a way that are unintentionally offensive, because I am still learning. But here are some of the differences I see between the two sides. Conservatives like the way things have always been. They say they are the party of family values and we should make America great again, like it was. But when are they talking about? How far back do they want to go? Because the reason there was much less divorce in the 50s is because women had no power over their own lives. They were not able to financially detach from their husband or their father. They couldn't get bank accounts or credit cards on their own. That made it nearly impossible to own property. The reason more couples split up now is because women have finally gained enough freedom to control their own lives instead of having men control them. Sure, more families were together back in the day, but who knows how many of them were actually happy? How many women may have been stuck in abusive relationships that they couldn't escape from? The rights that women have secured in the last 50 years allows them to make the decisions that are best for them and their children. Now they're trying to take that away, making women second-class citizens. The way I see it is conservatives want to keep things the way that they have always been because it has worked so well for them. The patriarchy, the white man having the most power, these are the things that keep white men at the top of business. That keeps them the main breadwinners, therefore they have the most control. They call progressives bad, and that's just downright confusing to me. Don't we want to progress? Do we want to go back to a time without technology? Do we not appreciate electricity? I mean, if America was once great and you were trying to make it great again, then which time in America are you talking about? Because as time goes on, things have progressed for everyone. Women, Black and brown people, people who are gay, giving them the same rights as heterosexual couples. Because why not? How is that hurting anybody? I get it, though. A lot of people don't understand it, so therefore they just don't like it. Instead of living and let live, people have now taken it upon themselves to call out what they believe is right and wrong. And that's the thing. That's your belief. That's one person's belief. And just because you believe it doesn't mean that I have to, nor should I live my life based on those beliefs. I think what it really boils down to is white men are feeling threatened. They are afraid of losing their place at the top of the hierarchy because the more rights other people have, the more they have to lose. If they have to compete with as many black and brown people for a job as they do with white people, then the chances of them getting that job may be a whole lot harder. And they feel threatened. They feel like their way of life may be over as they know it. I get it. That is, though, the part of the privilege we have lived as white people. But it hasn't been fair to everyone else who isn't white and who isn't male, for that matter. But they seem to forget the words that I've heard so often about black and brown people when they opposed affirmative action. You know, the people in my life, when they opposed that, they said, if you just work hard, you can be the one chosen for that great position. But somehow it's not applying to them. They're trying to keep the competition at bay. Probably because they didn't have to work as hard to get it in the past. And they don't like the competition. And I'm sure they don't like what I'm saying right now either. That is why I believe they are now targeting women. I believe the reversal of Roe v. Wade is an attempt to put women back in their place. Women have been catching up to men in the corporate world, medical world, political world, and most fields at this point. Now, they're still pretty far behind, but they are making strides. Again, men don't like it. That is why these conservative lawmakers are making such stringent laws and bans when it comes to abortion. It's a way to hold women back from progressing in this country. Even if they don't keep the child, they have to put their life on hold for 9 months. Restricted travel, they can't do labor-intensive jobs. If there are complications, they may need to go on bed rest, that is, for a long period of time, taking them out of the workforce altogether for however long that is. Because if it was really about life, then conservatives would vote for programs that would help and benefit children. And they don't. Their voting record proves it. The liberals that I've come across are fighting for freedom for those who want to live their lives as they are without being targeted. They would like to see things a little more fair and balanced between gender, race, economic levels. I see that they are hardworking and are happy to pay a little more here and there in order for those disadvantaged get a little help. Make things a little bit more fair. There's been a huge uproar over the recent student loan forgiveness program. I always hear people say, why are we sending so much money overseas when people need help right here? Well, this is helping people right here. But it's still wrong? I don't get it. I don't get it. And what I really don't understand is the MAGA movement, the Trump supporters. I just can't grasp how his supporters can excuse every single awful, criminal, and hateful thing he has done. I don't understand how you can be so angry over Black Lives Matter protests, but defend what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. Because there is one key difference between a protest for Black Lives Matter and what happened at the Capitol. One is trying to keep black and brown people from getting killed during traffic stops. The other was an attempt to overthrow the government because Trump said the election was stolen with no evidence. One is about people getting to live without fear of being killed because they're just driving or walking down the street. While the other is a lie Trump made up because he can't handle losing. I've heard so many people say when it comes to black and brown people getting killed by police that if they would just comply, which many of them do, by the way, but they wouldn't get hurt then if they just listened. Yet conservatives call the killing of Ashley Babbitt, remember? The woman who was breaking into the window of the Capitol building when she was shot and killed. They call her an innocent woman who was brutally murdered while breaking into the Capitol. Well, if she would have just listened to the police, that wouldn't have happened, right? So why is it okay for one group of people, but you don't have to if you're white and in the middle of an insurrection? I would really like to know the answer to this. So if any of the MAGA people are paying attention, please just answer me how those two situations are different. George Floyd and Ashley Babbitt. Please explain to me the difference. And why are conservatives making Kyle Rittenhouse, the child who showed up at a Black Lives Matter protest and killed 2 people and was acquitted? Why are they making him an icon of the party? And I have seen it. He is introduced on stage like some sort of rock star. Why? Why are they treating him like a hero? Because he got away with killing 2 people at a protest they don't agree with? Baffling. And here's another question I wonder about. If Trump was the same exact person with the same beliefs, background, business acumen, and personality, but he was black, would conservatives still support him? If the answer is no, they may be racist. If the answer is yes, then pretend Barack Obama has done everything Trump has done and answer the question again. Because not only is Trump a horrible businessman who has had 6 bankruptcies and working on another one with True Social, by the way, who has cheated hundreds of businesses out of their money, but he's broken law after law and is still supported and defended. I don't know. I don't get it. The only reason I can come up with is that they like the way Trump made them feel. He emboldened them to feel superior to certain other groups. He said it out loud. He said a lot of things that people would say in private, but wouldn't dare to say in public. But he has now made that okay. And everybody is. He has made it okay to bully and name call, and they are. And this is what disgusts me the most. He has normalized treating other people like shit. And it's not right. We are a civilized nation. We can and should treat each other with respect. It's really that simple. If you like today's episode, please share it with your friends. Check out other Hopefulist podcasts that help women stress less and live life to the fullest. Stay tuned for another episode coming in about a week or so. And thank you so much for tuning in today. Until next time, keep fighting and go be badass. Thank you for listening to The Hopefulist. Now, don't you feel good? Make sure you come back next week. See you then.